Hello and welcome to Spotlight Matthew for today as we continue in the 23rd chapter. This chapter, which is one of the most difficult ones in all of the New Testament, quite honestly, because of its content and because of Jesus being the one who delivers this content. As we saw in our last devotional study, in verses 1 through 12, Jesus launches his final great critique and criticism of the religious leaders there in Jerusalem. He brooks no quarter, he gives no space for them, but before the crowds and before the disciples, he is absolutely scathing in his condemnation of their leadership. And if there was any doubt before chapter 23 as to whether the religious leaders would do away with Jesus, there is absolutely no doubt about it by the end of this speech. And as we turn now to verses 13 through 15, we come to the first two of what are known as the seven woes. That is the seven woes of chapter 23, where Jesus says, "Woe unto you, woe unto you, woe unto you," 7 times to the religious leaders and officials. So let's read woe 1 and woe 2 found in verses 13 through 15. Jesus says, "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter it yourselves, nor allow those who would enter to go in. And woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves." Wow. Jesus lowering the boom, no doubt about it. So what is the content of woe number 1? It is that they will not enter into the kingdom themselves, and they are actively trying to prevent others from entering into the kingdom. Well, how are they doing that? Well, we saw from the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, his first public words in chapter 4 was that we are to repent, because the kingdom of heaven is near. Jesus' entire message is the proclamation of the kingdom of heaven. We read in chapter 13 of the parables of the kingdom, what the kingdom is like. Jesus is the kingdom proclaimer. And the really religious here are opposing his kingdom proclamation. They would condemn it, they would undermine it, they would discredit the message of Jesus. And every time they do that, they themselves are refusing to come under the teaching of the kingdom that Jesus provides, and they are trying to dissuade other people from listening to Jesus so that they may enter into the kingdom. For Jesus Christ is the one who teaches and preaches and proclaims the good news of the gospel of the kingdom. But secondly, along with that, Jesus not only teaches and proclaims the kingdom, Jesus himself is the kingdom bearer. Whenever one is in the presence of Jesus, one is in the very presence of the King of the kingdom, for that is what Jesus is. In fact, one church father from back in the early 3rd century, a man named Origen, said that Jesus is the auto-basilean. Auto, which means self, and basileia means kingdom. Jesus himself is the kingdom. The kingdom is comprised in microcosm in Jesus' own person. So if someone is opposing Jesus, then by definition, they are opposing the kingdom. And there is no question whatsoever that the religious leaders here are opposing Jesus the King, and they are opposing the King's message, the message of the gospel. And so Jesus says, woe to you, because you are opposing the kingdom and you're opposing its king. Secondly, Jesus then moves to the second woe, which is to say that the religious leaders are willing to travel across sea and land to make one proselyte, but, ouch, they make that proselyte twice as much a son of hell as they are. You know, the Jewish people and other people Jesus recognizes can be very zealous for what they believe. Cult members, the Jews are not a cult, but cult members are often very zealous about what they believe. But their zeal is misguided. And cult members often, and people of other religions, can be extremely sincere. They have no doubt within their minds that what they are saying are doing is correct. They are absolutely as sincere as any full-fledged abiding Christian. They are oftentimes more zealous. Would that we would be so zealous sometimes as those of other religions, or even of those who are in cult followings. But sincerity and zeal are not equal to the truth. And if what we convert someone to, if our zeal, if our sincerity leads people to anything but the King and the kingdom, to the gospel of the good news of Jesus Christ, then we are leading these people down the wrong path. Jesus has already said of the religious leaders that they are blind guides, and they themselves will land in the ditch and will bring others into the ditch who follow them. And so the message has to be the true message. Sometimes we hear in our culture today, it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you are sincere about your belief. But Jesus says that on Judgment Day, there will be many sincere sons and daughters of the King and the kingdom who will enter into eternal glory. But there also will be many sincere and zealous sons and daughters of other religions and philosophies and approaches that counter the kingdom and the king. And they will be the sincere sons and daughters on the who are on the way to hell. For the old adage says, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Let's give the Apostle Paul the last word for this difficult set of woes. This problem about being led down the wrong path was not something that developed long after the beginning of Christianity. Paul, writing to the church at Galatia in AD 49, just less than 20 years after Jesus' death and resurrection, begins the first chapter in verse 6 with these stirring words. I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. Not that there is another one, but there are some who trouble you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you another gospel contrary to the one which we did preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. Friends, in your devotion today, reread these two woes and make sure that you are entering into the kingdom, following the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And make sure that you are proclaiming him and his kingdom, that others might enter into it, because there's only one gospel, the gospel of salvation. And that's the gospel of Matthew for today. Check us out at spotlightgoodnews.com. Like us on Facebook. Share us with others. And we'll look forward to talking to you next time.